Every 2 years, 2 million Japanese people disappear. China's population is expected to be cut in half by the end of the century, while the average age in Italy has reached 48 years. Globally, birth rates are declining. This raises the question, is humanity dying out? Let's explore what's happening and understand how serious this situation is. For hundreds of thousands of years, the human population barely grew, facing challenges like disease, famine, and war. However, the Industrial Revolution marked a turning point, driving exponential growth that brought the population to 6 billion in 1999 and 8 billion just 24 years later. Although our numbers are expected to keep growing for at least another 60 years, there's an intriguing phenomenon. People have kind of stopped having babies. To keep a population stable, on average, each couple needs to have 2 children. If that number is higher, the population grows. If it's lower, it shrinks. If it's significantly below, a rapid decline happens, as seen in South Korea, a powerhouse in exporting pop culture. If things stay as they are, we still need to see if there's a limit to fertility rates. Looking at the big picture, in absolute terms, the population won't decrease that much. It will simply return to the level it once was. In 1950, South Korea had 20 million inhabitants. In 2023, it's 52 million, and by 2100, it's estimated to be 24 million again. However, the concern isn't about the shrinking number of South Koreans, but rather the makeup of the population. In 1950, the median age was 18 years old. In 2023, it's 45 years old. And in 2100, it's expected to be 59 years old. An aging country. South Korea isn't alone in this situation, since China is also experiencing a sharp demographic reversal, currently unstoppable. Rapid industrialization, urbanization, and rising incomes in China have led to a preference for smaller families. This, combined with the introduction of the one-child policy aimed at slowing population growth, caused China to have a low fertility rate for decades, with a birth rate of 1.16 births per woman. This means that, on average, each woman has just over 1 child. China's fertility rates are now among the lowest in East Asia, even lower than those of Japan. In comparison, Europe's depopulation is more gradual, despite low fertility, due to the continuous influx of immigrants. Oops. Watch your head, kid. His sister is tough, huh? The impact is complex, since many immigrants come from regions with low fertility rates. However, the number of immigrant women who have a large number of children is still not high enough to cause a significant decline, and immigrants' fertility rates generally adjust to those of the native population within 2 to 3 generations. In Eastern Europe, the population decline has accelerated even more due to the emigration of young people to stronger economies, such as Germany, whose median age is one of the highest in the world, reaching 46 years. Check out the look on the stud's face. Latin America reached below replacement fertility rates in 2015. In the United States, immigration is the main factor that sustains substantial population growth. However, there are still regions where fertility rates have not fallen below replacement, such as much of the Middle East, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa, where fertility remains high. Recently, the UN drastically reduced its projections for the African population. For Nigeria, for example, estimates were reduced from 733 million to 546 million by 2100. Similar trends are being observed across the continent, indicating that fertility rates in Africa are dropping more quickly than initially predicted. It is increasingly likely that by the end of the century, many places in Africa may also fall below replacement level. Thus, the decline in fertility rates and the aging of the population are becoming a global trend. Why is this such a big problem? Demographics are intrinsically linked to poverty. For a society to function properly, it is crucial to have people of working age. Young people and middle-aged adults do most of the work, and in any economic system, it is these people who generate the wealth of society. In retirement, the contribution to the economy decreases, but healthcare costs, predominantly generated by the elderly, increase. In the past, a younger population used to take care of the elderly. Now, imagine a society where most people are over 60 years old. The financial burden on the younger generation would be enormous, becoming unsustainable even for the wealthiest countries. This would result in people working for longer periods, increased healthcare costs, and a scenario of growing poverty, while states with declining revenues struggle to keep up with ever-rising costs. Although technology may help soften the impact, it cannot fully compensate for this challenging dynamic. We can already see this situation unfolding. 11 out of China's 31 provinces are facing deficits in their pension funds. Population aging happened before these regions became economically prosperous, and now they are struggling to recover. A 20% decrease in China's working-age population is projected, which is equivalent to 200 million people by 2050, a number comparable to the entire current working-age population of the United States. Infrastructure collapse is a universal constant associated with population decline. Infrastructure operates at scale and does not become cheaper to run if it is used by fewer people. When the population decreases, whether due to urbanization, loss of industry, or jobs, the resources needed to maintain infrastructure disappear. This is evident in many depopulated cities in areas of eastern Germany, which faced a sharp decline after German reunification. Japan also has dying cities due to population aging. Contrary to the expectation that life would become cheaper and better with fewer people, population decline does not lead to prosperity. Prosperity comes from people's ideas and work, not just from the availability of resources. Furthermore, aging societies face the risk of having elected governments that predominantly represent the interests and fears of their elderly populations, potentially leading to short-term decisions and a preference for preserving wealth at the expense of innovation. Many people believe that having fewer humans on Earth would be beneficial due to the unsustainability of our societies, excessive resource consumption, and climate change. However, even for those who wish for a reduction in population, this process is likely far too slow to have a positive environmental impact in the short term. The world population will continue to grow for at least another 60 years before it begins to decline, which highlights the urgency of addressing issues such as climate change. Similarly, any other advantage that a lower population might have will probably not materialize in this century. Importing people might seem like the easiest solution, but the fertility of immigrants adjusts to local levels within 3 generations. Thus, a constant flow of new migrants would be necessary, which is not sustainable in the long term given the global decline in birth rates. An alternative would be to keep poorer countries in precarious conditions, encouraging young people to migrate in search of opportunities to developed countries. However, this approach is morally questionable. By the end of the century, Africa will have the largest number of young people in the world, making African migrants potentially the most sought after globally, with aging nations competing for those willing to move. However, immigration can also generate social and cultural tensions, especially when different sets of values meet, often leading to reactions that slow down the immigration process. Economically, immigration is largely beneficial for societies, even if that may seem contradictory to some. Countries like the United States, built on the idea of freedom and opportunity through hard work, can benefit significantly, especially if they manage to attract the brightest and most ambitious talents in the world. One way to interpret the decline in birth rates is as a side effect of the world being less harsh than in the past, especially for women, who now have more freedom, education, and resources. However, as societies improve, people tend to choose to have fewer children. There is an interesting gap between the number of children people want and how many they actually have. The average desired number of children in Europe is around 2.3, much higher than the actual average. Over the last century, we have gained many freedoms, but this has come at a cost: the weakening of close-knit communities and family structures, which traditionally played a role in raising children. Today, young parents face different challenges and expectations from society. Women, in particular, find themselves torn between the desire to have a family and a career, often pressured to juggle both without clear compromises. Although men are sharing parental responsibilities more equally, they are still expected to play the role of providers. Unfortunately, in many developed countries, wage disparities between mothers and other workers contribute to the stagnation of parents' careers. In addition to external pressures, the culture of individualism also plays a role, with people choosing to explore their lives, travel, have fun, and pursue happiness, often postponing more serious commitments like starting a family. So far, no country has managed to significantly increase birth rates, so there is no clear solution. However, some options to make life easier for parents include free and abundant access to childcare services, financial benefits for parents, and more affordable housing. In addition, parenthood should not be an obstacle to one's career, and the culture needs to become more positive toward families. This is something everyone can help with. The next time you're next to a crying baby, remember that raising children is challenging. In the end, humanity is not destined to perish because of declining birth rates. The age and makeup of our societies are changing rapidly, and it's something we need to address sooner or later. Among all the incredibly tough challenges we face, why would this be something we can't solve? But what do you think about all this? Will governments be able to remain sustainable? Do you think that with fewer people in the world, life gets better? Share your opinion, because it's really important. Hold him back, girl. She already knows that finding a man these days is tough. Don't forget to check out the video that's showing up on the screen if you want to know more about what's happening in some countries. I'll see you in the next video. See you later.